So please help me welcome. We have Maria Alejandra Canales. She is on the program design team at OneGoal. She is our managing director of program design. We have Quali Kemp. She's the director of secondary success at OneGoal. And we have Ricardo Garcia, who is a Y3 fellow at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I am particularly excited about the opportunity to learn from these brilliant folks who have generously agreed to share their time, knowledge, and expertise regarding FAFSA with us all. Before we jump into our discussion, I'm going to start with a quick overview of our program at OneGoal. Everyone, meet Elijah. Elijah is a OneGoal fellow from Massachusetts. And like many students today, Elijah really didn't know where to start when it came to thinking about his future. And most students need more support and guidance to find in their post-secondary pathway. On average, public school students receive only 38 minutes of college admissions advice from their school counselors. Frankly, this is a brief amount of time, and it's insufficient for young people navigating a complex and challenging process. Especially for students from underserved and other under-resourced communities. It's clear that all of us at OneGoal, that students need much more support to successfully manage their post-secondary journey. OneGoal's vision is that every student will have an equitable opportunity to achieve their greatest post-secondary aspirations. We know that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. And today, 22% of students from low-income communities earn a post-secondary degree compared to 60% of their peers from high-income areas. Students participating in the OneGoal program improve their results in high school and on their post-secondary path. Our mission is to lead the movement to transform post-secondary advising and support. We work with communities across the country primarily through two types of partnership. Our first partnership is the direct impact model, and it is a daily class for high school juniors and seniors with an extra layer of support during their transition to post-secondary education. And just like math and English are taught during the school day, we believe post-secondary planning must be taught with equal rigor, and that students and school staff can be, teachers and school staff can be supported to effectively deliver that knowledge. And second, we have the OneGoal Leadership Network, which provides expert coaching and a community of learning for school and district leaders. We help them build and strengthen the systems and structures that will lead to increased post-secondary outcomes and close equity gaps for their students. This year, we'll reach over 87,000 students indirectly through the OneGoal Leadership Network, and we have 275 district and school leaders that are participating in our OneGoal Leadership Network across 57 partners in 7 states. You can learn more about OneGoal, of course, by visiting our website, which you can find in the chat in the moment. So you should be able to see our link in the chat. Please grab it and save it to explore our website later. Now that you know a little bit more about OneGoal, given your experience, please use the chat to share what is the biggest challenge that your students face when completing their FAFSA. So please, in the chat, share your thoughts on what is the biggest challenge that your students face when completing their FAFSA. Parental lack of knowledge is one. Yes, it's something we've seen. Parent participation, lack of knowledge. It's complicated. It's definitely a complicated form. The underused college and career centers at high schools. Okay, parent information, needing specific documents, the complexity and the answers they may not know or have access to. Tax info from their parents. Yes, I can say I definitely experienced that as a student. Rushing and not reading or taking it seriously. It's often misunderstood, and access to documents and parent knowledge. Yes, great. We are seeing some responses come through. Thank you for taking a moment to fill this out. I see a lot about parent knowledge, a lot about participation, having the right documents, and then also the complexity of the FAFSA. These responses resonates with us. and what we see in schools across the country. And we hope that the strategies that we shared today will help you to overcome some of these challenges. FAFSA, which stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, is a key step for students who are planning to attend college or other post-secondary institutions. Completing the FAFSA helps students unlock financial aid opportunities to make higher education more affordable. Here is a powerful statistic that highlights the impact of completing a FAFSA. 92% of high school seniors who complete the FAFSA enroll in a post-secondary institution directly after graduation. This data underscores the crucial role that FAFSA plays in helping students transition to higher education. Fellows, FAFSA completion can feel overwhelming for many students. So I heard a lot of y'all say how complex the process may be for many students and families. But with the right strategies, we can help them navigate the process successfully. Last year, the Department of Education rolled out a new version of the application, which was meant to simplify the process. For example, the latest version has been reduced from roughly 100 questions to fewer than 40. There were glitches, especially for students whose families are of mixed status. This year, the good news is that the FAFSA is open earlier than expected. Yes, it just opened. It officially opened to students today. However, many of us on this webinar support students from mixed status households, and we want to acknowledge that there are still a lot of questions on how to best support them. All right, supporting students from mixed status households is a major concern for us at One Goal. And while we don't know exactly what to expect, our team is closely monitoring the situation and working with others in our sector, including NCAN, to determine how we can guide the students in the most responsible way. On one hand, we want to encourage as many of our students as possible to apply for financial aid, as without it, post-secondary education is out of reach for millions. And on the other hand, students may not know all the ways the personal information of their families might be used for purposes other than their financial aid. We know the situation is ongoing, and it's important for those of us supporting students to continue to monitor and to provide the most updated guidance. While we navigate the ongoing situation, today we're going to focus on strategies to support all of our students to complete the FAFSA. I'm going to invite Maria Alejandra to join me as we break down into 3 focus areas. Maria Alejandra? All right, so the 3 key focus areas, the first one is deadline management. And deadline management is when we emphasize the importance of completing the FAFSA early whenever possible. And then early applicants typically have access to more financial aid opportunities. And so, Maria Alejandra?
Yes, so this is a big one. I think helping families prioritize FAFSA amidst so many competing priorities and their busy schedules is really important. FAFSA takes time to complete. As we know, we've named that, right? It's complex. There's a lot of moving pieces. And so making sure that we're delivering key messages of applying early and starting the process early is really important for our students. And just want to do another plug. I know Jamie mentioned this earlier, but FAFSA is now open in beta testing for all students. And so making sure that we're getting prepared and having, marking our calendars, setting up the time that we need for our students in the coming weeks so that we can all start that process, and supporting them is really important.
Thank you. And so the next key focus area is the promotion of FAFSA events. So we think promoting FAFSA events, or we know that promoting FAFSA events helps to get students to apply. And so organize events like FAFSA nights or FAFSA pop-ups at schools, libraries, or community centers where families can get direct assistance. Matt?
Yeah, the key here is really to provide and support as many options as we can for families. We know that families have different schedules, different competing priorities. And so the more we can provide different events at different times and work together as a community, the better. Right? Promoting events can also mean leveraging existing avenues such as newsletters, websites, social media. or phone and texting services that already exist. So think about how do you plug these into avenues where you already know that families and parents are listening to, they're reading, they're already used to this line of communication, leveraging those so that we can continue to host those events and have them be highly attended.
And then our third key focus area is building partnerships. And so partner with local organizations to spread the word and ensure that families know that these resources exist. Collaboration can amplify our impact. Work with high schools, colleges, community organizations, and financial aid experts to provide comprehensive support.
Hopefully, we're starting to see a theme here, right? Now more than ever, it's really critical to partner with each other so that we can gather best practices, rely on each other's expertise, and really reach as many students as possible. And so when we're thinking about what can I do, what, you know, if I'm a teacher, I'm a school, I'm a district, think through what you might do, but then also what is happening around your community, because building those partnerships become crucial when you think about the impact and the reach that we want to have as a community at large. And the goal here really being that as many students as we possibly can reach, complete the FAFSA and get the support they need in order to do so.
Yes, and so these strategies to support students and families with FAFSA, which include managing deadlines, promoting events, and building strong partnerships, can help to make sure that FAFSA completion is both smoother and more accessible process for all students and families.
In helping students with completing scholarships with community-based organizations, I've seen these organizations ask for verification that they have completed their FAFSA. So just to show the criticalness, if you will, of the FAFSA. So the application itself is extremely important to the overall post-secondary success of our students all over the country.
Thank you, Willie. Thank you for sharing. Ricardo, we would love to hear from you why you think the FAFSA is so important.
Like Ms. Kemp just stated, it is very resourceful for those unrepresented communities. One, because it helps decide whether or not if you are going to go or not going to go to college. Well, at least that was my perspective, because financial aid was just a major deciding point for me, whether if I was going to get FAFSA or not get FAFSA. If I wasn't getting FAFSA, I knew that college was still an option, but it's going to be way harder to afford, and the stress on the underrepresented communities is the same thing that I went through, because I've been in an unrepresented community my whole childhood, my whole life. So I've lived it firsthand, and just experiencing all of that, I have gotten to learn that FAFSA is just very important, because it can bring a lot of stress, but when you apply and when you get it done and out of the way, it's such a big reliever, especially for those underrepresented communities.
Thank you for sharing. And Maria Alejandra, what is your perspective on this?
Yeah, I'm gonna likely echo a lot of what has already been said. But at One Goal a few years ago, we took time to really talk to students to find out what is keeping them from completing their post-secondary journey. And what came up as top of the line here were financial hardships. So being able to continue, even if they started in the process, being able to continue, because there's lots of different financial hardships, particularly for represented communities, that happen not just at the beginning, at the start of a post-secondary journey, but throughout, right? And so we know that's one of the top reasons why they either do not enroll or stop out and do not complete. So completing FAFSA year after year, I think that's the tricky part. It's not just when you start, but it's every year, right? It really does make it possible for students to pursue their aspirations. And I know from my own experience, I'll echo some of what Ricardo shared, by being the daughter of immigrants, the first person in my family to graduate from college. Like, if I would not have gotten FAFSA, maybe I would have attained my college degree, but it would have been a lot more difficult. And who knows, right? And so making sure that we're supporting students from our communities to like continue to access funds and help them through these barriers continues to be a priority for us here at One Goal.
All right, there is no doubt that FAFSA is a significant service to support students. We're going to move on with the next question. Maria Alejandra, in your role leading program design, what common hurdles do educators face when trying to engage students and families in the FAFSA process, and how can they overcome those barriers?
Yeah, I think we heard some of those in the chat already, right? I think family in participation, getting that information in are top challenges we continue to hear. I think additionally, depending on the schools and where they're located, internet access, having access to like laptops and computers sometimes become barriers if we're wanting to host large events, figuring out how to do that so that everyone can access and have that. Language barriers is something that we see too. I know, FAFSA is in English and in Spanish, but we know there are a lot of other languages that are spoken throughout our communities. And so language barriers comes up. And we mentioned this earlier too, but there are concerns about sharing personal information, particularly for mixed status families. And so it becomes really important to start to figure out who our communities are, who's in your class, if you're a teacher, who's in your school, if you're a school leader, right? Like who's the folks that you are serving, and what of those barriers or which of those barriers come up so that you can proactively address those as much as possible.
Thank you. And thinking about some of the things that you just shared, what are some practical tools or communication strategies that you've seen to make it easier for educators to explain the importance of FAFSA to families?
Yeah, so I will name a few. I think first and foremost, starting early, right? And so we can't wait till like the week or the two before we're going to engage in FAFSA to start bringing families in. It becomes really important to start building relationships and trust of the community, of the families, of the students. And then I think becomes an issue of like communication. So thinking about those language barriers is one. Two, frequent reminders are often helpful, right? And so thinking about how do you get out communication to families and parents, and what can you leverage? Do you have an Instagram or social media that you can leverage? Are there phone banks in place that you can send out? Phone banks, parents can receive that call, not just your student didn't make it to class or whatever the situation is, but like, hey, don't forget this deadline's coming up, or this opportunity, this FAFSA event is coming up. So we've seen a lot of success in that way. And then the other piece I'll add is, I think some folks in the chat mentioned like it's complex. There's lots of moving pieces. Simplifying the language when possible is really helpful. So taking a moment to look at whatever is on the form or the communication that's being sent out and making sure that you're trying to avoid as much jargon as possible and translating some of those key messages in a way that really resonates with families, and they can understand and that speak to them is really how we can get that message out to folks and have them really listen to what we're trying to share out.
Thank you. And I want to reiterate what you said about communication and making sure that the language is simplified. And I'm going to connect this note to Carly. Carly, building on Maria Alejandra points, how can educators create a FAFSA support culture within their schools and provide that comfort?
Absolutely. I actually was shaking my head yes every time I heard Maria talk. Educators need to get comfortable with adopting that village-minded mentality. And what I mean is the philosophy that it takes a village. That village can come in the form of support from external partners that can offer free support and are eager to push into schools and deliver FAFSA-related or financial aid-focused resources to all that needed. There are several organizations. I'm actually in Chicago. And so within the state of Illinois, there are several organizations, several supporters who provide the best differentiated supports and can get access to the most recent information and data that educators can tap into. Recently, because I'm actually just coming out of the classroom not too long ago as a One Goal program director, and one external partner that we tapped into last year knew to solve a critical issue that was actually barring students from signing and adding their signatures and submitting the FAFSA last year. That was knowledge that I did not have. I did not have that streamlined information coming directly from the state as that external partner did. If that external partner had not offered their services and pushed into my classroom, undoubtedly we would have had so many students that would have walked across the stage without a completed FAFSA. So just one thing that I can recommend is to lean into those partnerships and create that village for your school. That's just one of the most the best ways that educators can create a FAFSA support culture within their schools.
And thank you. And Quaylee, I understand that your work focuses on secondary success.
Yes.
What advice do you have for educators who are struggling to get students to prioritize FAFSA amid everything else that they're doing in their senior year?
Yes, yes. One of the things that we have to acknowledge, or I have to acknowledge as I answer that question, is that I believe, based on my observations and having worked with the FAFSA application for the past 12 years, I believe the root cause of students not prioritizing FAFSA is because it can be such an overwhelming and intimidating process for students, for families, for educators, for everyone that's engaged in this. And so one of the best ways that I was able to see success with FAFSA completion with my kiddos was to prioritize building trust, building rapport with students and families first. Relationship building is actually an overlooked yet extremely important step to navigating this entire process, because someone is trusting you with financial information, and you have to kind of dig deep into things that we as a culture don't like to talk about out loud. So that's a very important step that should not be overlooked. I also want to encourage educators to lean into positive language. It's very easy for us as educators to become frustrated and get overwhelmed and say, oh, this stupid FAFSA or whatever the case. But just remaining optimistic and remaining positive and leaning into that positive language as much as you can when discussing the matter can actually mean all the difference. And then finally, incentivizing completion of certain steps with the FAFSA, it always gets the students going. That could be in the form of school-wide recognition, verbal praises, tangible rewards. I've even seen high schools raffle off prom tickets, raffle off extra tickets to the graduation for those who have the large families and they're trying to hustle some extra tickets at the end. When they complete their FAFSAs, or when they do a very integral step in the FAFSA, when you provide those incentives, of course, students are extremely competitive. So that kind of gets the fire lit and gets them into action. I do want to note that if you do decide to incentivize FAFSA completion and taking the instrumental steps to financial aid, to make sure to make it culturally relevant when implementing the strategy, it's okay to differentiate the tasks based on the students that are in front of you. So for example, if that means that you are a student in the state of Illinois and you are ineligible to complete the actual FAFSA, give incentives for fellows who are taking, or students who are taking or completing the RISE application or the California Dream Act application, right? If you're in California, you can differentiate that and celebrate students for navigating this process, because it is such an arduous process. So those are just a couple of tips that I have that could help light a fire under the kiddos who are kind of pushing it off on their priority list.
Oh no, it looks like we might have lost Jamie.
Okay.
So I'm gonna step in while she's out and follow up with a question for you, Quaylee.
Okay.
What
Sounds
role
great.
can educators play in ensuring students feel confident about filling out the FAFSA? So we talked about how to get them, incentivized, but how do we get them to feel confident, especially when there might be fears or misconceptions that they're grappling with?
Absolutely. Definitely just starting with acknowledging the fear. And I'm so glad that I have my former student, Ricardo, on this panel, because he can attest to some of the things he saw me do in the classroom just a few months ago. I don't know if anyone on the webinar knew that, but Ricardo is actually one of my former students. I'm super proud of him. So number one, ensuring that students know that they are not alone in this process and that they have your advocacy and they have your support that is a crucial way to build confidence in your students. And so as I navigated this role last school year, which was just a couple months ago, back in January through about May, June, I always reminded Ricardo, I always reminded his peers that most seniors in high school, the overwhelming majority, and many college students were navigating the same challenges. I showed them what was happening in the news. I showed them the latest headlines. And I was as transparent as I possibly could be about the realities of what was happening with the FAFSA at the time. But in doing that, that wasn't setting up a fear tactic, but it was building them and letting them know that they were not alone. And so I made sure that also they knew that we, meaning myself, our post-secondary team, external partners, One Goal, the state, that we were all fighting for them, and we were seeking as much information as humanly possible. And so, in fact, this in turn helped to settle students in a sense that things would work out for them. And if they were still experiencing challenges, they knew who to go to, they knew where to go to them, they knew that they could sign up for a call or sign up for a session to meet with this expert, and they will be able to troubleshoot their issues. And in that sense, they became advocates themselves, which is the reason why we have awesome students like Ricardo on the call today to talk about his own experience with FAFSA and how he was able to navigate as well.
Jamie, I see you've joined us. I'm not sure if you're able to jump back in. I'm going to keep us going while we figure out. Oh, I see you coming in. Hey, Jamie, welcome back. I was about to invite Ricardo in and bring you into this conversation. I saw you had raised your hand earlier too, I think. I would love to hear from you, just as someone who just went through the process, as we heard. What were some of those initiatives that you experienced that really stood out to you and made a difference as a student filling out the FAFSA?
Like Miss Kemp said, just being transparent and being genuine with the students, I feel like that's all it takes. I took that from Miss Kemp. Trying to become an educator myself now in college, so I'm going for my secondary degree for high school math. I just take that and seeing how transparent Miss Kemp was with her students and showing us how we're not alone, and that treating this as humans and treating us as equals was, I feel like, the best thing that I got done to me during this process, just for the reason that I felt included. I felt like I knew what was going on. Yes, I was still scared, and I still had fears about what if FAFSA doesn't come in at a time, or what if FAFSA doesn't work like for my college, or what if like my college decides to go somewhere else because of me not being able to get FAFSA. But when I had those hesitations, like Miss Kemp said, there was a team set there. There was a team for me. There was a team that I knew that if I went to them, they would take care of me. They would help me do whatever was in their power to help me with FAFSA. With that, like, even with Miss Kemp, she would do anything in her power to help us. I say this because I had a peer where he applied to a college and they didn't want to give him his FAFSA. And I remember that day, within 5 minutes, Miss Kemp called the state, she called the school, and they were on a 3-way call, and they got my fellow peer their FAFSA. So just being able to see that and see that a teacher's willing to do so much for you just for your future was something that really helped me and made a big difference in my education.
Thanks for sharing, Ricardo. Maria Alejandra and Quilly, many students are hesitant to complete FAFSA because of concerns about privacy or misunderstanding about eligibility. How do we change that narrative and build trust with families? And Quilly, I will start with you.
Awesome, thank you. Just again, starting as early as possible, in order to, have these conversations, and preparing students and families with that the most. One thing I loved about the One Goal curriculum when I was a program director and teaching it, is that they had many steps prepared during junior year to help families navigate the FAFSA, and to talk to they put the onus actually on students to go home and to talk to their their parents and say, hey, these are my options. These are the things that I'm thinking about for my post-secondary life and my post-secondary journey. Where is our family in this financially? And those conversations in our curriculum began junior year. But dare I say that we can begin these conversations, begin this relationship building during freshman year. Start talking about it, start having students immersed in that world as early as you possibly can, and then just building that culture of that village minded culture, like I mentioned earlier, and that collaborative efforts with the parents, bringing them in even for just fun, simple initiatives at the school, but being able to build those relationships over time, so then when we get to this moment, it's easier for those families to trust in you, to that you will navigate them and their student in the right path.
Thank you. And Maria Alejandra, what do you think?
Yeah, I love that. Trust takes time to build, right? And so it doesn't happen overnight. And so this idea of how do we do this over the course of a few years, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with financial aid per se, but just like building an awareness broadly is really helpful. One thing that I would add is that as we think about, a school, a unit of a school, there's a lot of different students and different families, and it's diverse, right? And so they're going to build relationships with different folks in that school building. They're going to have different levels of trust with folks in that school building. And so knowing that, how can we rally all around like the FAFSA completion efforts, right? So that we're all as a unit at the school giving the same messages, thinking about the same things, bringing in folks, because everyone in that school building will have access to different folks, will talk to different folks at different times. But thinking about how to rally folks around this effort, I think is really important, and continues to build upon existing relationships. I think something that we find at One Goal that alludes to what Paley was sharing earlier is that a lot of the success that we see at One Goal really is because of the relationships that our program directors or the One Goal teachers build with their students. And so replicating that, which is already happening across our school buildings, and just leveraging that to support FAFSA completion is really helpful. And the last thing I'll add here is as it pertains to the part of the question around like misconceptions and whatnot, misunderstandings that might be around FAFSA, it's always helpful to go back to FAQs or step-by-step guides and provide those for families, as often as needed. Have hard copies, have websites, send them in the communication, just so that folks are getting the right information at the right time throughout the entire process. And I think we might have lost Jamie one more time. So I'm gonna bring you in, Ricardo, into the conversation. If you could give educators one tip to better connect with students around FAFSA as we're thinking about building trust, what would that be?
The one tip, I feel like my one tip goes further than just like connecting students with FAFSA. I feel like it's just in general, just stepping back and taking a second to view what these students are saying and view what these students are coming from or what their culture is. Because like you said, these students are going to create connections with different teachers. These students are going to create different connections with the same teachers. They're going to create what they want to create. So just taking that step back and allowing them to be themselves and you viewing them can provide the correct, not even the correct way, the most proper way to help them and provide the help. Being that maybe it isn't like, if I was an educator, maybe it isn't me telling them directly because we might not be as close, but I know that she's or he or she is connected more to that person. So maybe talking to my fellow, like a fellow teacher, hey, I see that you have a better connection with this student and this student. Maybe you can talk to them about this and this, or maybe you can talk to them about that and that. And that provides a comfortable and a trust like community where a student knows that, oh, I trust this teacher. I come to this teacher when I'm most vulnerable. So I can see that what she's telling me or what he's telling me is for my own good. And I can see that, oh, yeah, FAFSA is really important and I should take it serious and I should apply with care. So I just feel like that one tip is just to step back and wait and just see and let your students be who they are so that you can provide the proper help.
Thank you for that response. Now we're going to get into partnerships. So what partnerships, whether with community organizations, higher education institutions, or alumni, have you seen work well to support FAFSA completion efforts? And how can educators tap into these resources?
Yeah, what I've seen work well to support completion efforts around partnerships are partnering with organizations that center the communities we serve. And so this idea of sometimes we're like planning all these events or hosting events and we're thinking if we build it, they will come. That's not actually always the case. And so thinking about it the other way, right? Like where are folks and families already gathering? Where do they already have relationships? Where do they already go? And leveraging those organizations and those institutions to continue to build the relationships and trust within the community, and that they share their language, they share their culture, they share other aspects of their communities that maybe we currently don't. And so those partnerships I've seen work really well. I've also seen successful events when we think about like marketing or like spreading the word. Leverage, again, this idea of like what already exists, right? Leveraging local radio stations or existing events that we know where folks are going to be, that flyering, setting up a table, right? So again, meeting the community, meeting our stakeholders, our students, our families where they are, and going to them is where I've seen those partnerships really flourish and really bring in the numbers that we're hoping to see and have the impact that we're hoping to reach.
What I'm hearing, just something that's in common between Ricardo and Maria's responses is that a knowledge of the people that you're serving, and that's extremely important to know the community, know the students, know the parents, know the families that you are serving. So in terms of resources, so that's very instrumental. But in terms of resources, in the state of Illinois, I've leveraged the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. That is our financial aid agency for the state of Illinois. They have a ton of resources, but one resource that I leaned into the most was the ISAC Corps, which there is a group of intensively trained recent college graduates who push into schools, and they push into community organizations to deliver support on the entire college preparation process from a state level knowledge. I am an ISAC Corps alumni. Well, it was my first job out of college. And so the work that we had completed during that time was not only helping with the FAFSA, but college applications, helping students do scholarships. I helped 5 students receive the Gates Scholarship when I had working at Kenwood Academy in Chicago. And so the Corps, they are trained by the state financial aid agency. So all the things that happen with FAFSA, all the things that happen with financial aid, they are the first to hear it. And so when I mentioned earlier that we leaned into that support and we had someone come in, an external partner who knew the hack on helping students to sign the FAFSA and submit it, that was an ISAC Corps rep. They do the work for free to the schools and free to the community organizations. They deliver financial aid presentations, presentations on how to get scholarships, how to complete the FSA ID, just a plethora of different resources that they are able to provide. And one thing I love about the organization is that they have even specialized training. Some of the Corps representatives are Spanish speaking, so we were able to lean into that for the students. When that community of students was growing, we were able to lean into that, and they were in the families who needed someone to translate, was able to work directly with someone who spoke their language. And I knew that that was going to be an important resource because I knew my students, I knew the community that I was serving. So just leaning into the supports that come from that, or come from that knowledge, will mean all the difference.
Can I also quickly add that ISAC was a great opportunity? Yeah, it was something that like it was only there a couple times a week, but it was great because having those well-rounded people, knowing that I could go to them for anything that I need, was just a great support to have as a student, especially when you have that fear with FAFSA, with the hiccups that we had last year. Well, basically like the beginning of this year, I feel like it really helped build my confidence and build like the trust into my community and the trust that it does take a village. And my village was very knowledgeable because of these people. Having those hacks, having those ways to get around issues was just a great thing to have as a student.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks to all of you for sharing. I have another question. It is, if you had to give educators one actionable takeaway to help them support students through FAFSA, what would that be?
Just one, we can only do one takeaway. I'm a planner at heart. And so my takeaway is, knowing that FAFSA there's a lot of moving pieces and it's not a one, you can't sit down and complete it at once, right? So my takeaway would be literally pull out a planner or a calendar and start mapping out that process. Because we know that in order to get started with FAFSA, students need to create an account and they need to have an FSA ID, right? Along with the contributors or parents or who that might be for them. And so making a plan, having a date by which you're going to start the process, and then when you're going to return to actually support students to complete that, whether that's a FAFSA night or whatever it might be, just having that in mind that it's multiple, there's multiple steps. And so making sure that we're working through that. And then if I could add one more actionable takeaway here is, man, the password resets. I know that hadn't come up in like a barrier, but like remembering your password for all the different things and whatnot sometimes can get really frustrating for students when they forget it, or then they're having to email their parent. Like there's just like a bunch of different things. And so providing students an easy and unique way for them to like have a password and remember it has been life-changing for many of the teachers we've supported. And so thinking about that as a quick actionable thing that you can do for students feels really important.
Awesome. And another question. Looking ahead for the schools, how can schools take a more proactive approach to FAFSA preparation, starting earlier in students' educational journeys?
Yeah, I can come in. I'll invite others to share their responses too. I think, whenever possible, creating broad awareness across campus so that, whatever FAFSA event or FAFSA awareness you're having, it's not just targeted to our 12th grade students, but it's just everyone's hearing about it. There's like a normalizing this as part of the experience. Like, we all know we're going to go to prom. We all know we're going to have, grad night or whatever it might be in our communities. How do we make it so that we all know we're going to complete FAFSA, or like there's going to be FAFSA week or whatnot? And so just making sure that we're thinking about how to normalize that experience, bringing families in early and often throughout their experience so that we're building those relationships. Again, those things take time. And so I think the sooner you can start to do that, the better. But I welcome Ricardo or Quayle, if you have any thoughts on, how do we start earlier with students?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like you mentioned, though curriculums, we typically see this work starting maybe junior year. It does not hurt to get this going 9th grade. So at schools, open this up. Typically we have, senior parent nights or FAFSA nights, and they're only reserved or marketed to 11th grade students or 12th grade students. What would be the harm in and opening this up to 9th and 10th grade students and families so that they can begin to prepare, embedding the talks and the language and college preparation in all classes at all grade levels. When students start to have their mind on their post-secondary journey, they start to know the steps, they start to prepare. And then again, like we mentioned, leveraging those external partners, getting students in programs. I was always super big on getting students in extracurricular activities and programs even outside of the school that could help to kind of foster those relationships, have scholarship programs that follow them throughout their high school journey and get them on the mind frame so that they're living in that world. They're able to visualize that world. College trips. When you're immersing students into that culture, that's when their heads will be on it. So don't just reserve the college trips for the juniors and for the seniors. Invite the freshmen to come on those trips. Invite the sophomores to come on those trips so that they can start to immerse themselves in that world. They can start thinking about it. I've taught freshmen and they've said, yeah, already know I want to go to LSU. So I need to start preparing for this program, doing this football thing, and so on and so forth. So when they're immersed in that world, they spring into action, and you'd be surprised on how they come before you junior and senior year where they're involved in the actual thing. So that's just my feedback. Ricardo, do you have any additional feedback?
I feel like everything you said is great. That's the course that I took freshman, sophomore year. I went on a lot of college trips, went on a lot of like sprees. I thought I was gonna be a chef. I thought I was gonna be in accounting. I thought I was gonna be an architect. And those trips that Miss Kemp and my school provided to me going to different colleges. First of all, just going to one college at all, seeing the college campus and seeing what college was as a freshman or a sophomore motivated me. Like, look, this is what's waiting for you after you're done with high school. This is what's waiting for you when you go through all the difficulties of sophomore, junior, senior year. Like, I have this waiting for me. So that motivated me. And I feel like if it motivated me, it could motivate a lot more people seeing that they have this in their near future. And then that motivation is used to whatever it takes. I'm gonna tighten myself down and I'm gonna do what it takes to get to college. I'm gonna do what it takes to finish FAFSA and get that FAFSA so I can get that support that I know that I need financially to be able to go to college. So I agree with both Maria and Miss Kemp because starting them off way before junior year is better, just so that one, the students have the knowledge, and two, the parents have the knowledge of what FAFSA is, how to apply, how it can help, how if you don't apply, it doesn't help, and how it can affect you. And knowing what you want is a big thing also. So helping them find different paths, or if you know some students may be interested in one thing, take them on a trip. Make sure that that's actually what they want. Make sure that that's what their heart desires. Because I would have hated to gone to like a different school and I didn't start this whole process till junior or senior year, where now senior year I'm confused and I'm going through all my options and I'm not sure of what I want. Now I'm sitting here in college and I'm 100% sure that education's where I want to go and I do want to become a teacher and I'm going to take the steps to complete that. So it was very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So thank you, Maria, Quaylee, and Ricardo for your insights and stories. This has been such an enriching discussion, and I know our attendees are walking away with practical ideas to make FAFSA completion a success for students and their families.